A long time ago, there was a young girl named April who lived in a small village with her father. April's father was poor and didn't have much, but he loved his daughter very much. April was a hardworking girl who always wanted to help her father. He had a small farm where he grew a few crops, and April would work alongside him, doing whatever she could to help. When April was just a baby, her mother left. She disappeared the day after April was born, leaving her with her father. Nobody in the village knew where her mother went, and they never heard from her again. This made April's father very sad, but he decided to focus all his love and attention on his daughter. He even quit his job at the factory so that he could stay home and take care of April. As April grew up, she became very close to her father. She told him everything, what made her happy and what made her sad. April didn't have any other family members, so her father was the most important person in her life. He was not only her father but also her best friend, and he loved her with all his heart. But one evening, something very sad happened. While working on the farm, April's father suddenly fell down and died right away. This was a terrible shock for April, and she was heartbroken. She couldn't believe that her father, who had always been there for her, was gone so suddenly. After he died, April felt lost and alone. She would go to his grave and sit there for hours, crying and asking why he had to leave her so quickly, without any warning. April missed him so much that her heart ached. The house where they lived together now felt empty and lonely. Every little thing in the house reminded her of him. The chair he used to sit in, the tools he used on the farm, and even the sound of the wind outside. April was afraid of being alone in the house because it was filled with memories of her father, and it made her feel even more alone. She didn't know how she would ever get used to life without him. Her life came crumbling before her. One day, while April was sitting by her father's grave, a young man approached her and offered his heartfelt condolences. Seeing how sad she looked reminded him of when he had lost his own father a few years ago. This young man, named Sam, had made it a tradition to visit his father's grave on his birthday, as it brought him some comfort. Having known the sadness that accompanied the loss of a loved one, Sam became a source of joy for April. He would visit her home, spending hours cracking jokes and telling ancient stories, helping April find laughter again. As the months went by, April and Sam became inseparable and soon fell deeply in love with each other. Their shared grief brought them together as they drew strength from their collective memories and forged a future filled with hope. They eventually got married in a ceremony attended by the entire village, who rejoiced with them. After being married for several years, April and her husband Sam were still waiting for the blessing of a child. April wanted nothing more than to hear the sweet cry of a baby in their home. She dreamed of holding her own child in her arms, but that dream never seemed to come true. As time passed, April became more and more worried. She decided to do everything she could to find a solution. April visited many herbalists in different villages, hoping that one of them would be able to help her. Each herbalist gave her a different remedy to try. Some gave her special herbs to drink, while others made her take strange concoctions. April was so desperate that she tried everything they suggested. Her stomach became a place for all sorts of mixtures and potions, but none of them worked. No matter what she tried, the child she longed for never came. Sam, her husband, was very kind and supportive. He always told April that he loved her and that they would be okay, even if they didn't have a child. But despite his comforting words, April felt a growing sense of pressure. She could hear the villagers whispering behind her back, talking about how she hadn't been able to give Sam a child. With each day, those whispers grew louder in her mind, making her feel even more anxious and troubled. April loved Sam dearly, but she couldn't shake the feeling that she was letting him down, and this made her heart heavy with worry. One night, April had a dream where a young woman who looked exactly like her snatched a baby boy from her arms and began to run. April tried to chase after the woman, but her legs were fixated on the ground, unable to move. April woke up from the dream, terrified, and wondered what it meant. The next morning, she decided to go to the market to buy some food items. When she returned, she found a strange woman sitting outside her house. Curious to know who the woman was, April approached her cautiously, only to be hugged tightly by the woman, who began to weep. Confused, April wiggled out of the woman's embrace and asked who she was. To her great surprise, the woman revealed that she was April's mother. April had never imagined that this day would come. Her mother, who had abandoned her the day after she was born, had miraculously returned. April didn't know what to feel at that moment. A part of her was happy to finally see her mother, while another part was filled with rage, a rage that had been subdued all these years. She wondered what she could have done wrong to be abandoned by her own mother a day after she was born. "Why?" was all April could mutter, and her mother held her hands, apologizing for all the pain she had caused. She explained that she was young and naive, deceived into leaving the village by a man she believed loved her. She knew how much April's father loved her, but she was never in love with him. Once April was born, she eloped from the village with the man she truly loved. April's mother claimed that everything she did was for love and that she was truly sorry for abandoning her. She begged April to find a place in her heart to forgive her, as she had returned to make peace. April, having longed for a mother's love all her life, forgave her mother, and they hugged to seal their reconciliation. April offered her mother a place to stay, believing she would be a source of comfort during her struggles with conceiving a child. April poured her heart out to her mother whenever she felt overwhelmed. One day, April and her mother went to the market, where they met a woman who told them about a powerful juju man in the neighboring village who could give her children. Excited about the news, April told her husband, who strongly opposed the idea of visiting the juju man. He had heard terse things about him and did not want any member of his family involved. Feeling sad, April approached her mother in tears, overwhelmed by the pressure of not having a child. Her mother advised her to go against her husband's warning and visit the juju man. She warned April that if she didn't have a child, her husband might marry another woman, so April should do everything possible to secure her home, even if it meant going against her husband. April, desperate for a solution, decided to visit the juju man one hot afternoon. When she arrived at the juju man's hut, he told her that her husband was behind her inability to have a child. He claimed Sam was an evil man and that if she ever wanted a child, she would have to leave the marriage. Devastated by the news, April returned home and confronted her husband, who denied any involvement in her childlessness. Sam was distraught by the accusation and vehemently denied any involvement in such dark practices. He pleaded with April to trust him, assuring her of his love, but April's mind was already poisoned by the seed of doubt planted by the juju man's words. The atmosphere in their home became tense, filled with distrust and heartache. Feeling isolated and desperate, April made the painful decision to leave Sam. She moved in with her mother, who welcomed her with open arms. However, April did not know that her mother was the mastermind behind all the confusion in her home. She had conspired with the woman in the market and the juju man to convince April to leave her husband so she could take over her home. Over the next few months, April's mother grew increasingly close to Sam, feigning sympathy and concern over their broken marriage to draw him closer and charm him into falling in love with her. Sam, feeling abandoned and betrayed by April, found solace in her mother's arms, unaware of the deceit at play. As time passed, April's mother and Sam developed a relationship that eventually led to their marriage. April, still struggling with her emotions and her failure to conceive, was oblivious to her mother's marriage to her husband until it was too late. When April learned of their marriage, she was overwhelmed by a sense of betrayal and confusion. Her heart ached not only because of her husband's actions, but more painfully because of her own mother's betrayal. She realized that recent events were not coincidental. Her mother had orchestrated the breakup of her marriage to fulfill her selfish desires. Feeling utterly deceived, April confronted her mother, who told her how stupid she was for leaving her marriage. Her mother admitted that she was deeply in love with Sam and was unwilling to leave him for anyone, not even her own daughter. April, in that moment, regretted ever accepting her mother back into her life. She confronted her husband, who could not look her in the eyes. The man she had known was gone, and this broke her heart. She could not believe she had let her own mother take over her beautiful marriage. April, unable to withstand the betrayal, moved to a neighboring village, where she focused on healing and rebuilding her life away from the past that had betrayed her so deeply. April began to find happiness within herself, realizing that her happiness was not tied to having a child or a husband but was found within herself and her ability to overcome adversity. Meanwhile, Tragedy struck one morning when April's mother, who was carrying Sam's child, fell gravely ill during childbirth. Her labor was so painful, and her breath began to grow thin. After several hours of painful labor, she gave birth to a son. But as the newborn baby's cry pierced the air, April's mother's life slipped away, surrendering to the cold hands of death. In that stark moment, the spell she had secretly placed upon Sam cleared from his eyes, and he regained his senses. He was immediately overcome with remorse and set out to look for his wife, April. The cloud of enchantment that had fogged his judgment vanished, revealing the harsh reality that he had married his own wife's mother, who had borne him a son. Filled with remorse, Sam sought out April, who was living a quiet life in the neighboring village. When Sam found her, he pleaded for her forgiveness, explaining how her mother had used a charm to hold him down and how he was unaware of all that had happened over the past months. April, although deeply hurt, knew that holding on to anger would only keep her bound to a past that had already stolen too much from her life. So, she chose to forgive him to free herself from all the bitterness and pain in her heart. When Sam found her, he pleaded for her forgiveness, explaining how her mother had used a charm to hold him down and how he was unaware of all that had happened over the past months. April, although deeply hurt, knew that holding on to anger would only keep her bound to a past that had already stolen too much from her life. So, she chose to forgive him to free herself from all the bitterness and pain in her heart. Sam pleaded with her to return to their village, as her mother had died while giving birth to his son. He explained how he had named the child after April's late father and expressed his desire for them to raise the child together. April, seeing the sincerity and remorse in Sam's eyes, agreed to return home. April and Sam took on the responsibility of raising the boy together, treating him as their own child. Although the boy wasn't born from April, he quickly became the light of their lives. They loved him deeply, and he brought so much happiness into their home. His laughter filled the house, and both April and Sam cherished every moment with him. Raising the boy helped April and Sam heal from all the pain and suffering they had gone through. The boy's presence reminded them that even after all the hardships, life could still be beautiful. They found comfort in each other and in the love they shared for the boy. Day by day, their hearts began to mend, and they slowly rebuilt their lives. Through this journey, April learned something very important. True strength and love don't come from outside. They come from within. She realized that no matter how difficult things got, she had the power inside her to overcome anything. Her strength and determination became well known throughout the village. People began to see April as a woman of great courage, wisdom, and resilience. April's story became an inspiration for many women in the village, especially those who were struggling with infertility. She encouraged them not to lose hope, no matter how hard things seemed. April would tell them that the challenges they faced were tough, but they had the strength inside them to keep going. She became a symbol of hope, showing that even in the darkest times, there was always a way to find light again. The boy grew up, and April and Sam lived the rest of their lives in peace, raising him in love and truth. And so, they all lived happily ever after.